Give me liberty or give me death. Patrick Henry's speech to the Second Virginia Convention is widely regarded as one of the most important documents in American history. But before you jump into this famous speech that quite literally changed the trajectory of the nation, let's take a quick historical tour to understand its context. We're going to go back to 8th grade American Revolutionary era history and quickly review some of the incidents that preceded both the First and Second Virginia Conventions. Recall incidents like the Tea Act of 1773, when the British government told the American colonists that they were only allowed to purchase tea from the British East India Company at inflated prices. Or the Sons of Liberty, who organized protests, made speeches, and sometimes even did things like dumping Great Britain's tea into the Boston Harbor to show their disagreement with those unfair rules and taxes. Or the Fairfax Resolves, written by George Washington in 1774, that stated the colonists should have the same rights as the people in Britain and that they shouldn't be controlled by unfair laws but should be able to govern themselves. Or the Fincastle Resolutions, issued in January of 1775, which declared that the American colonists would be willing to resist the British crown even unto death if necessary to preserve their political liberties. All of these and more stand in the backdrop of the Second Virginia Convention that met on March 20th, 1775 at St. John's Episcopal Church in Richmond, Virginia, where Patrick Henry proposed arming the Virginia militia in defense against Great Britain. Patrick Henry is often described as a radical, a person who wants to see dramatic change in basic beliefs or ways of doing things. During the Revolutionary era, perhaps no one was more politically and outspokenly radical than this Virginia lawyer. But he was a controversial figure. Even a decade before his famous speech, at a time when there was still widespread support for the British crown, Patrick Henry called King George III a tyrant for overturning laws that the Virginia legislature had passed. And 2 years later, when speaking against the Stamp Act, some of his fellow politicians cried out that he was promoting treason. And for a time in 1775, the governor of Virginia declared him an outlaw. And even after independence was achieved, Patrick Henry continued fighting for his views. He opposed the Constitution in its original form because he felt that it granted the federal government too much power and was influential in the creation of the Bill of Rights. Now that you've had some historical context into Patrick Henry's speech, let's go over the learning objective and tasks for this first read assignment. Our learning objective is to be able to make inferences about the author's meaning and support those inferences with textual evidence. Remember that inferences are things that are implied in the text, but not always directly stated. Now for your tasks. You're going to be comparing the speech to the Second Virginia Convention with Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from Birmingham jail, a document that is considered one of the most important in American civil rights history. If you have already done that module, then you've got a head start. But if you did not do that module, then you've got some reading ahead of you. Be sure to watch my video on that first read assignment, although you're not going to have to complete the reading quiz or the full module if you're only using it as a comparison for the speech to Second Virginia Convention. Another optional comparative reading is A Voice by Pat Morra. The theme of this poem is about speaking up, so it's a good fit for both of these historical documents. But please note that A Voice would be in addition to the letter from Birmingham jail, not as a replacement for it. If you haven't already, take a few minutes to watch the video preview and read the introduction to this speech to the Second Virginia Convention that are on tab 1. This will help prepare you for what you're about to read. Make sure that you do the vocabulary drag and drop activity on tab 2 to familiarize yourself with a few words that may be tricky or confusing. You can search for the definitions in Google, and you don't have to do the create your own sentences using the vocabulary word part. It's important to remember that this speech was given in the 18th century and that people spoke and wrote differently back then. They used a lot of big and formal words that we don't use as often today. So, beyond the vocabulary list on tab 2, I expect that there may be several other words throughout this speech that you are not familiar with. I would encourage you to stop and look up any words that you're uncertain of and don't just skip past them. Next, read the summary that's above the text. Because this is an 18th century document, the language can be a little difficult to follow. The summary will help you map out the main ideas in your mind as you're reading through the speech. Then, when you're ready to dive into the speech, I highly recommend slowing yourself down in your reading and really trying to understand what Patrick Henry is saying. This is where good annotation skills are really going to come into play. I would encourage you to highlight key ideas and try to reword them in your own wording in the comments box, as well as make a note as to why you think it's important. Again, we're asking ourselves, what is Patrick Henry inferring? This means that you have to read between the lines and figure out what Patrick Henry is both saying as well as what he's suggesting but isn't directly stating. After you've finished reading and annotating the text, it would be really helpful for you to find a partner and discuss the skills focused questions beneath this video. As I've mentioned, the language of this speech is not easy to follow. It takes some work. Discussing the text with someone else will really help your understanding and prepare you for the skills assignments. Finally, take the reading quiz and submit the assignment. You have your work cut out for you with this module. Both Letter from Birmingham Jail and the Speech to Second Virginia Convention are incredible historical documents, but they can require significant effort to read and comprehend. Know that I'm here to help you through these and will do everything that I can to help you succeed. Just reach out to me. Good luck.